Now, I can't believe how bad it's gotten. I mean, it's here. We all know we're screwed. The question is, if it's going to get worse, what do we do? The good news is this: if it gets worse, you still have time to prepare. That is money supply. It's M2. Just too much money in the system. But the question is, so what's going to happen? Let's say they raise interest rates, they push us into a recession. That's going to crush a lot of small businesses, and if prices go up, I think the problem is in the bond market. That's my concern. And the repo market, which is short term, as short as it gets. So I'm watching all this stuff. I want to know what a person can do.
In 1913, the Fed is the third central bank America has had, because every president has warned against central banks, like the Bank of England. And the Fed is not federal, it has no reserves, and it's not a bank. It's a cartel of banks. And in 1913, the Fed, the third one, was created, starting with President Washington, said, do not have a central bank. Since, 1776. Not only was the Fed created in 1913, so was the taxman. The Beatles always sang about the taxman. Well, in 1913, the 16th Amendment was passed, which caused America to be taxed. And almost up to that point, till 1913, America was a tax-free nation. Hear me out. For money to exist, the dollar or the pound, taxes had to exist. So it was one of the biggest scams going. And that's why 1913 is so important. And then in 1944, as World War II was winding down, the world agreed to make the US dollar the reserve currency of the world, which it is today, if America promised to keep it backed by gold. So in 1944, the United States says, we promise we'll back it by gold. And then in 1971, President Nixon says, oops, we broke our promise. And that allowed money printing to go out of control. So here we are today. I just got this. It just came in. It's The Economist from London. And it says here, governments have spent $17 trillion on the pandemic, including loans and guarantees, for a combined total of 16% of the global GDP. That's how much money was printed last year. 16% of the global GDP. Now, if that doesn't cause you to run out and buy gold and silver, I don't know what will. They now have to keep printing or we crash. That's why I've been bullish on gold for all these years. You watch who's spending the money. It's the government. I don't trust them. I never have. So, they're so incompetent. I just can't believe it. They're incompetent people. They're like Marx, highly educated people who don't know how to make money. They're not capitalists, they're socialists. And if you understand that, in a few years, you're going to find out these banks are in serious trouble because of debt, because all the Fed and the Bank of England has to do is print more money. And as long as people will accept this toilet paper like this, people are happy. But the moment one day somebody says, oh my God, $10 billion, but it's not worth it. I was in Zimbabwe. This wouldn't buy me an egg. What's screwing us all up are academics. The academic elite, the liberal left and all this, I don't know where their heads are at, but they're not up in the air. And so the Fed fits into that category, the Bank of England fits into that category. They're doing all these projections and all this, but they're not attached to reality.
When you look at the numbers, is that we're already in a depression. In other words, if the economy's been growing at 3%, it's only growing at 2%. That's a technical depression. So people are watching, the stock market's up, everybody's happy and all this, but everything's inverting upon us. So just recently, the euro-dollar curve inverted. Every time that has happened, it was followed by Lehman Brothers and it was followed by COVID.
America is going Marxist. And when I look at what's going on in Portland and Seattle and New York and Chicago and the cities, how in the world can we defund police and all this? How in the world can we keep printing money and doing what we do? So I started storing gold in Switzerland and in Singapore. So in case I had to run, gold and silver are flight capital. And the problem is most people don't know the difference between a Marxist and a capitalist. Economics taught in military school are different than the economics taught in business school. Military economics is different than civilian economics. So in military school, this is in the 60s, my economics teacher said, who kills more people? It was socialist or capitalist. And the answer is socialist. The Nazi Party was a National Socialist, whatever we call it. They killed 18 million people, 6 million were Jews. Stalin, the USSR, Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, killed 26 million people. Mao Zedong killed 46 million people. Pol Pot in Laos and Cambodia, they killed 15 million people. So the reason Americans go to war is to fight that. We fight for capitalism. So the reason my uncles went to fight and an uncle fight in Korea is to fight socialism. If you study the Communist Manifesto, it's really simple to see. Communist Manifesto, it was designed, what Marx said, was to take people from agrarian into totalitarian. But to get there, they needed capitalists to set up, take them from agrarian to industrial. So once the capitalists were in place and they set up an industry, so what's going on? What happened in China? Mao came to power, and Mao was, China was an agrarian society. Mm-hmm. So Eng comes in and he says, to be rich is glorious. He was the first capitalist guy. He was bringing in capitalism to China. And now you have Xi, who is emperor for life, totalitarian for life, and they're killing the people in Hong Kong who are capitalists. The odds are Taiwan is next. As I say, as a former US Marine, I fought for capitalism. Unfortunately, America is going socialist, Marxist, and eventually totalitarian. So my money is out of this country. It's been out of this country for years. And I'm getting to run, just like the people are running out of New York City, Chicago, Portland, Seattle, and San Francisco. Well, it actually started, in my opinion, because I'm the baby boomer. The Marxists knew, or the socialists knew, the way into the U.S. was through the students. And you look at what's happening today, our schools are out and out teaching kids Marxism and socialism. So the freedom of speech is gone. That's why I'm concerned, is we're going more and more Marxist. But it actually started in September 17th, 2019, when the repo market went crazy. The repo market interest rates went from like 2% to 10%. But that was indication that the Fed and the Treasury were going bankrupt. So what happened when the repo market went crazy in 2019, the Fed and the Treasury stepped in and took over the repo market. And then they started manipulating prices. So that was September 2019. December 2019, oh my God, COVID, Wuhan. Right. So I criticized that. I said, there's something fishy going on. Well, as you know, if you criticize any of that stuff, vaccines and all that, the mob comes after you. Look at the doctors who said, COVID is BS, they get fired, they get taken off. If that's not Marxist, if that is not the First Amendment being destroyed, I don't know what is. And then to get accused by the Washington Post, which is Bezos' bunch, and I have no defense. The question I have, is this biological warfare? That's my question. Being a military guy, a Marine, I'm not that bright, but I get suspicious. See, those are the questions that suspicious minds ask. When I look at that, I say, how does this Fauci have the power to basically destroy capitalism when the facts state that COVID does kill people, but it kills a certain group of people? It doesn't kill everybody. And so those are the questions, I've always had as a person who, not that I don't trust my country, I just don't trust it. Globalization is very, very left. There's a correlation between prosperity going to China and other countries and jobs leaving country. You look at what happens. So guys like me, I make more money when jobs leave, truthfully, because my manufacturing is done in China and Taiwan and Korea. And so we just recently, this is before COVID, we started bringing our manufacturing back to the States. We've got to get back to protecting the worker and the jobs.
Now, that goes against the liberal point of view. What happens to the worker? That's my concern. I'm not Republican or Democrat, but I am a capitalist. I studied economics in military school, not business school. I did go to business school.